New developments in the crazy curveballs in the Jussie Smollett case tonight. In a scene that had everybody scratching their heads, the state's attorney threw out the findings of their own law enforcement and a grand jury and just suddenly dropped all the charges against him. Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. Jussie Smollett, to the shock of the Chicago police, cleared all 16 counts against him. You will remember just weeks ago, the Chicago police said that the actor had made up the whole hate crime, allegedly to advance his career.
Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career.
And that gentleman, the police commissioner, is standing by that today. But Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, who, by the way, recused herself from the whole case early on. She stepped aside from the whole thing. But she then came out through her people and let him go. The city's mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and the police superintendent were not amused. Watch.
Do I think justice was served? No.
This is a whitewash of justice. If you're in a position of influence and power, you'll get treated one way. Other people will be treated another way. Mr. Smollett is still saying that he is innocent. Is there no decency in this man?
At the end of the day, it's Mr. Smollett who committed this hoax, period.
Trace Gallagher, live in our West Coast newsroom tonight with the growing fallout about all of this evening. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. Legal experts across the country say it is highly unusual for a state's attorney to completely back down from a strong case without uncovering new evidence or new witness testimony. Yet the assistant state's attorney, Joseph Magatz, who dropped the charges, made it sound like this stuff happens every day, saying Jussie Smollett was treated like any other defendant who has no felony criminal background and was not involved in a violent crime. Yet the very same assistant state's attorney says this should not be interpreted as Smollett being innocent, and he says the prosecutor's office stands behind the Chicago police investigation. A bold statement considering Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson and the lead investigator both say the case was rock solid. But today, Jussie Smollett wasn't about to take responsibility. Watch.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
Adding insult to Chicago police injury, the, quote, rock-solid case against the actor will never see the light of day because it's been sealed. And Smollett will not be required to perform additional community service, will not have to avoid further charges or fulfill any other conditions, though his $10,000 bond was forfeited, which is not nearly good enough for the Chicago mayor. Listen.
$10,000 doesn't even come close to what the city spent in resources to actually look over the camera, gather all the data, gather all the information that actually brought the indictment by the grand jury.
A police spokesperson put the cost of the investigation in the hundreds of thousands, with the final tab still being tallied. And it's notable the only reason the assistant state's attorney, Joseph Magatz, is the lead prosecutor in this case is because state's attorney Kim Foxx recused herself over, quote, questions of impartiality. Turns out weeks ago, a former aide to Michelle Obama called Foxx saying Jussie Smollett's family wanted her help in getting the investigation turned over to the FBI. Foxx responded, quoting here, spoke to Superintendent Johnson. I convinced him to reach out to the FBI to ask that they take over the investigation. Foxx then sent nearly the same message to a Smollett family member who responded, quote, oh my God, this would be a huge victory. The case was never turned over, but the Chicago Police Union is now renewing calls for a federal investigation into Foxx's interference and what they call suspicious conduct from the beginning. Martha.
New developments tonight. Trace, thank you very much. So here now, Martin Pribe, the Chicago Police Union Vice President, who has blasted State Attorney Kim Foxx's decision to drop these charges and is renewing calls for a federal investigation into her handling of the case, as Trace just mentioned. Sir, good to have you with us this evening. What do you think happened here?
something very dark and suspicious. You know, this is not the first time we've attacked the Fox administration since she came into office. There's a lot here that investigative reporters definitely need to work with, and we definitely believe that the federal authorities should investigate what happened here and look at the evidence. And we certainly hope that Mayor Emanuel's strong rhetoric will translate into the same call for a federal investigation.
So let's put up on the screen the explanation for the decision to drop the charges. It says, after reviewing all of the facts and circumstances of this case, including Mr. Smollett's volunteer service in the community and agreement to forfeit his bond to the city of Chicago, we believe this outcome is a just disposition and appropriate resolution to this case, she says. So essentially, it looks like it's not an exoneration note, but it says because he's done, some nice community service, good things for the city, and because the $10,000 bond is going to be given back to the city of Chicago, they're just going to call it a done deal.
It's complete nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't address the issues. We've gotten this from Fox on several key cases. It's just kind of a Chicago doublespeak. The good thing about all this is that the national media gets a really clear window into how the criminal justice system works, or I should say doesn't work, in Chicago. This is an example of how things work in this city, and it's ludicrous, it's ridiculous, and but that's the reality of things in Chicago.
I want to play one more soundbite from Jussie Smollett today, who was very clear in how he felt about all of this. He clearly felt that he was vindicated and that he had expressed his innocence all along and stood by it. Watch this.
I would also like to thank the state of Illinois for attempting to do what's right. But make no mistakes, I will always continue to fight for the justice, equality, and betterment of marginalized people everywhere.
All right, so he says he's going to continue to fight for justice of marginalized people everywhere. I'm not sure what that means in terms of his case. We know that the two brothers, in terms of the police investigation, were found to have, they spoke out about what they said he asked them to do to create this hoax in their mind. That was what they spoke out about. So what happens now? I mean, if he says this happened, who did this to him, and where does the investigation go now?
Well, okay, but let's ask a few basic questions before that. If you were innocent and you were being charged with all this, wouldn't you want to go to court and prove your innocence?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't a trial be the place where you would want to go and just destroy your accusers? But when you have a prosecutor, who's willing to bail you out, his statements are really just laughing at the system. And, he disguises them in the traditional rhetoric of social justice and whatnot, but that's a common trope in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very general statement. He's not saying, he's saying that he was the victim of a hate crime. He's standing by the beginning of that story, and yet he professes no outrage about what happened to him or finding the people who actually did it, if in fact that's what happened. Martin, we got to leave it there. Thank you very much. We're going to stay on it. Good to see you tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So President Trump